Hey,
Hi, Prasanni.
I actually with the charger connect point. So give me like 2 seconds. Let me
Okay.
connect the
No,
charger.
no, no, no worries, no worries. No rush.
And my background is like पूरे anti light पड़ने help us so मेरा face clear आएगा ऐसा नहीं.
Iras, Iras.
Okay, how are you?
Go 1 second. Can you hear?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, first. Good, good, good. So the audio is good. I've been doing well. हल्का चहल पहल छ नेपालमा दसैँ तिहारको.
Festivities part. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. पुरै चङ्गाहरू
Aw,
उडाइरहेको थियो आज म पाटन जाँदाखेरि अनि brought back कति धेरै nostalgic memories and everything. And it was a happy feeling to see that बच्चाहरू अहिले पनि चङ्गाहरू उडाइरहेछ and
not
getting
sticking to
involved
their
in,
phones.
yeah, exactly, like physically involved भइरहेछ in festive activities भन्छ. That was a good thing.
I
Happy
love your
feeling.
background by the way. Cute. Is
Thank you.
it like
So this
Halloween
is
thing?
no, this is actually a tapestry.
Okay, okay.
अनि yeah, मेरो रुममेट्सहरूले चाहिँ मलाई गिफ्ट गराएको थियो. And they were like, "Oh, this is your personality in a tapestry." And they gifted it
Really?
to me, and I was like, "Oh, thank you."
That's your personality? Oh.
That's how I'm perceived, right? So, according to them.
Because I see you as like very colorful and like
Yeah.
eh, yeah. Anyway, okay, just give me 1 second. Zoro wants to go inside. Okay, going. Um, the
No.
background put a better con, but okay, there you go. Um, anyway, thank you
How
for.
are the cats doing? Well,
Oh, they're
sorry,
doing
I'm
good. They're doing good. One of them is asleep in the other room, and he's just playing around. They're doing really good. Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All
He
right.
might you might see him Zoro in the background because this is his like playing
Love
time.
it.
Yeah,
Love the special appearances.
I know. Okay, anyway, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. I think this is a very, very important and sensitive topic, and I couldn't have found any like, better person but you to do this. Um, and before we get started, why don't you give a brief introduction about yourself, what you're doing, and maybe why you're passionate about this topic in specific.
Sure. So, my name is Prasanni, and I have known Polishadi since a long, long time. We've had a really nice history of performing together, of having lovely, healthy conversations together. She's been very supportive of everything that I've done, and I hope I have had such a part in your life too, I know.
Yeah.
So talking about myself, I'm currently in Nepal. I'm a recent psychology graduate. I graduated from Colvin University, New Jersey, and then I came back here. I'm currently working in Nepal in a mental health social enterprise called Mankakura. And the whole um, purpose behind our team is to provide accessible mental health services all around Nepal. And for that, we have our counseling sessions, and we also have other non counseling campaigns. We have trainings, we have mental health sensitization sessions, right? We have other psychosocial well being related sessions for students, teachers, and whoever reaches out to us for collaborations. The reason why I'm so passionate about mental health and emotional intelligence and everything that's related to all of this is I'd say half of it is personal experiences that made me realize the need of it in personal life. Also, the need for mental health in Nepal as a whole, as a society, and just globally, just the need for mental health globally since the shortcomings we have had, pandemic, we've had a lot of social political changes, and that has caused so much chaos. And it's so clear that mental health conversations about mental health is very important now more than ever. Okay, so
Right.
yeah, that sums up my introduction, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think you're doing a great, great job, and I've just like from my personal experience too, just making sure the light is coming. Right, okay, just from my personal experience too, you brought up COVID, and I think I also have realized that after COVID, my mental health was bad. I mean, I got like digestive issues. I think I've shared this with you, and how you mentioned that that is related to your mental health and how your mental health affects your physical health as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, thank you for sharing all that. We have a lot to touch upon, but let's start with basically, I think, our childhood and our culture and how that shapes us, our brains, our mindsets, and how that almost sets a path for what kind of emotional journey we have for the rest of our
Mm-hmm.
lives. Zani, do you want to touch upon that a little bit about our childhood and maybe especially in Nepal, the way we're brought up? Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess before doing that, maybe
Yeah.
we can talk a little bit about our own childhood. So now I guess we can start with you. How did your childhood look for you in terms of your psychosocial well-being, Manuna? How was it? The family, school? Would you like to
Mhm.
share about it?
So I think my childhood was very, very positive because my mother was the most like she was like my cheerleader basically. She would always praise me. She'd be like, you're great at this, you're like, you're awesome. And she would
Oh.
always have these she'd always give me like positive affirmations. Okay. If I'm dancing, she'd be like, "Oh, you're doing great," and she would share it with all our relatives. And then maybe if we're at a social gathering, she'd always, I don't know how good that was for other kids, but she would
Mm-hmm.
always be like, she did this, she did that, or she got this percentage, she's been selected for that, she's head girl, she's that. And she never really stopped me from doing anything. I remember like if I told her I want to do this, mom, and she would be like, okay, let's do this. And I remember my mom was a little bit strict in a way that she wouldn't let me roam around or like go out, play outside with friends. But I also was very understanding, and I didn't really want to do that, really want to go against her. But if she saw that there's some event or there's some activity that would help me grow as a person, she would herself go out of her way to help me do that. So for example, I remember we used to have like dance rehearsals in our school in like Saturdays or like during holidays, and she
Mm-hmm.
would come drop me off, and she would wait for the entire 2 3 hours, and she would not leave, and she would pick me up and go. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, why did you wait? I mean, you could have like, I could have like maybe
Mm-hmm.
just got on a bus and like come back home myself. But she was like, no, it's not safe and it's not that. But she was really, really protective that way. And I know, I mean, like this sounds very like cheesy, but I really, I still till date I feel like she's the best mother in the whole world. um
Oh,
and even the good touch bad touch thing, right? Now we're
right.
talking about it, but I didn't even know that she was telling me about this when I was not even in nursery. I think she told me this when I was a kid. She was like, people will touch you in a bad way. They'll try and touch you in a bad way. When you're a crowd, be careful. And she shared her own stories. She shared her own story. She was like, there was an uncle who would like touch me in my chest, and she shared this.
Mm.
So,
Right, right.
and later on, I realized, okay, my mom was basically teaching me good touch, bad touch when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, all in all, it was very, very, very positive at home. At school, I think people tried to bring me down, but my mother was always like, I would share everything to my mother, and she'd be like, they're just jealous of you. Like, don't let them get to you. And so no
Mm.
matter whatever people told her, you're short, you're like, you're fat, or you're ugly, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it affected me that much. It did affect me, of course, because I mean, I was like a growing girl, like who wanted to feel beautiful, and there were people who were trying to bring me down, but then my mom was always by my side, and she would
Mm-hmm.
always tell me that you're the most beautiful, and all these sort of things. So basically it
Oh,
was very,
wow.
very, I think my whenever I think of my childhood, and like even now when people tell me that you're so confident, like all that stuff, and I was like, that's all my mother, like it's all because of her. She's always made me feel so special, and she's given me
Right,
so
right.
much confidence. And I think a big part of what we are is our parenting and how our parents treat us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was my childhood, but I wouldn't say it was perfect, perfect, but for the most part, it was good. Yeah. What about you?
Right. Right. So, uh, first thing, this makes me feel so happy to hear that you had a really supportive environment and a very affirmative environment. And hats off to your mom. She seems like a really cool person, right?
Yeah.
And that's very important. कि बच्चा बेलामा, when when we are kids or when people are in their childhood, it's very important for the caretakers to build that kind of environment where the kids are growing, where the kids are not very limited, right? I mean, it makes sense for our parents to have some kind of rules, but at the same time, it's very important for them to be open to talk about such kind of conversations, like you mentioned, good touch and bad touch wala kura. It's very, very important for them to build this kind of environment so that your kid can come to you and share what's happening in their life. It
Mm-hmm.
should not be like something's happening in their life and they do not have a safe space to go to because they don't have that safe space in their homes. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
very important. And talking about my childhood, I feel like school was pretty okay for me because I was a well performing kid in terms of academics, and I was a conventionally good kid. Bhanum na. How a good kid is labeled in our society, who's very submissive, who's very sozy, who doesn't speak against anything and just follows the rules. So I was a very following the rules kind of kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at home too, it was the same environment because I was such a good kid. My parents were so proud of me, and like you mentioned, they would always be like, "Oh, she's the best," and like you said, I don't know how healthy was it was for cousins or other
Other
kids who
kids.
yeah other kids who were like being placed in that comparison, but that was the scene, one no. And then crossing childhood, beginning the teenage phase of my life, I started becoming a little bit of rebel in a sense that I started to question the rules. I started to say no. I started to have my own boundaries. And then people were like, oh my God, she was such a good kid. Good kid. Now, अब त बदमास हुन थाल्यो. I started hearing those kind of comments. So that was a very interesting distinction that I think we'll touch upon in a while, right? So that was um, my childhood. Summing it up, I was a good kid, and then I became a rebel. In summary, um, and then so yeah, this makes me really curious and makes me want to talk about this distinction of good kid versus bad kid that we have in our society, right? Like I said, if a kid is really quiet and so and they're not talking against their elders, they're not questioning anything, they're not vocalizing anything, and they're just going with the rules and everything, they're considered good kids. Oh, उसको छोरा त कस्तो ज्ञानी छ, कहिले पनि केही भन्दैन, चुप्प लागेर भात खान्छ, जे दिए पनि खान्छ, केही पनि फाल्दैन. There's this whole comment and expectations and that those kind of preferences that our families have. And whenever a child is speaking their mind, whenever they're vocalizing their opinions, whenever they are showing their emotions, and then they are considered as oh कस्तो बोल्ने भएछ, they're going against what the elders are saying. So there's this kind of labeling that I've noticed, and it's still present in the society, right? So that that's directly relates to why people feel uncomfortable talking about their emotions, talking about how they feel, why they hesitate being vocal when they're adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, because your mom always had this really supportive environment um where she was setting healthy rules in the house, but then also allowing you to go out there and do things and speak out your mind and do whatever you wanted to do in a good way, and that
Yeah.
hence as an adult you feel comfortable talking about all these kind of things and all the wonderful activism and campaigning that we've been doing, right?
Yeah.
So these
Um,
are all the things that were
yeah, I lost my train of thought. मैले तिमीले के भन्दा मैले exactly मलाई याद आएको थियो I was gonna share. Um, I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, never mind. We can move on. If it comes back to me, I'll share that.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Um, Anyway, so we talked about childhood and all that, and
Mhm.
do you want to talk in general about schooling as well? I know like we had schooling listed a little bit later,
Yes,
but I think like since we're
yes,
already talking about childhood, we want to share a little bit
absolutely.
about schooling too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you can go first, and I can probably add something to that.
Sure. So, a very interesting observation in all of the conversations that I've had with my friends, right? Since young adulthood to adulthood, or whatever we call this phase of life, Panamna, I've always heard traumas that's directly related to schools and teachers. So, schooling is such an important part of our mental psyche or mental health that we experience as adults. Okay, so Nepali schooling system is not the best. It's absolutely not the best. How the rules are set up, how there's so much moral policing. At least maybe it's not the same right now, but at least when we were attending school, middle school, it was the worst as much as we have experienced, Manum, no? So in terms of but I've heard a lot of body image issues. I've heard a lot of sexual assault issues. I've heard a lot of bullying, and not just from friends or peers, from teachers too, right? We have had teachers who were absolutely unsupportive, who were absolutely unhealthy in terms of how they talk to the kids, in terms of how they were comparing the kids. The students who were always performing well in academics, they always had a privilege in class. Okay? This is a very well known fact, and um, that affects the other kids so much in terms of their growth. And I've heard so many comments from my own friends saying that school पछि त मेरो एकदम धेरै personal growth भयो. This comment is so general and so normal. I've always heard people talking about how they've hated their teachers because uh, they've said so many mean things to them that it sticks with them for a lifetime on it. Okay,
Right.
so I don't know. Do you have any such experiences, first hand, second hand,
So
related
so
to school?
So I had, I think, a couple of bad experiences, but it affected me a lot. But before I mention that, I always like when Sunny tell people, "Oh, my school was awesome," or "My plus two was awesome." And Sunny, I was always like in doing great academically. I was like in the top 10. I was doing like dancing, singing, and all that stuff. I was doing all the
Mm-hmm.
ECA. And whenever
Mm-hmm.
I talk about this with my like school friends, old school friends, they're always like, it's the exact opposite for me. And it was almost like time showed me the mirror. Okay, you had the best
Mm-hmm.
time of your life in school. You were the center of attention. You were popular. You were doing great in school. But at the same time, people who were in the same environment felt the exact opposite. And don't know if you remember this, but I think 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago on Teachers' Day, I put a post on Facebook about how schooling was such a toxic environment, and there were so many
Yes.
friends who reached out to me. I think that post had like 100 shares, and I had never like like there were so many people who related to that. And
Right.
some of my friends told me that one of them wanted to be a doctor, and then like how the teachers sometimes they do this activity where you share about yourself and what you want to be in life. And this particular friend shared with everyone that she wanted to be a doctor, and that teacher basically mocked her and said that you cannot be a doctor. I mean, like, look at you, like, like you're so poor in academics, how can you do that? And there
Mm-hmm.
were several other incidents, but looking back again, like as you said, comparison, there were teachers who were very selectively toxic. Okay? So they had their favorite people who would be like great. So, like, suppose, for example, like I was good in studies and I used to, like I was class captain. I used to like Sunny take their notebooks and put it in the staff room. So they were like, oh, like they would
Mm.
always praise me. And the others were, and they would just like look down upon other students. Okay. And it's just, I don't know, like every kid is special. And now I look back, I feel so bad. And I know I was still a kid, but I really feel bad that I didn't do anything to help that environment, to help
Mm-hmm.
other students, my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool for me. But other than that, there was this really bad. I don't know. I don't want to. Yeah, I would just call her a bad person. I remember she
Mm-hmm.
was the Nepali teacher, and there were a lot of people who liked her, but there was a majority of people who didn't. I know that for sure. And she would pass very bad comments. So she was a Nepali teacher, so she would speak in Nepali. She would be like, to make fun of, oh kale, oh mote, ke garis. Like she used to like, and
Mm-hmm.
there were certain groups of people who used to like, like who used to find humor in that. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people did. Right. And I
Right.
remember there was one incident where she called me a very bad student or bad person because I forgot to knock. Like I used to make all these announcements, and I don't know what it was for, probably some speech competition or something, and I didn't see her and I didn't knock, and I just like made the announcement
Mm-hmm.
like outside the door, and she made that a big thing, and that really, and that was the first time I think I experienced a little bit of anxiety in my life. I'd never experienced that before, but that
Mm-hmm.
was like, and then maybe that was just one incident for me, but imagine that might have been every day for those kids, right? That might have been every day for those kids. And for me, that was like, because I was a good student, I was never like, hated by teachers. And that was like one of the first experiences for me. But then now when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, this might have been every day for some of those kids. And
Absolutely.
and I have had some friends, as you said, they were like, I had so much growth after I finished school, and like maybe their plus two or their bachelor's environment was much more friendly, or even they grew as a person and they maybe realized, how to take control of their life. But in
Mm-hmm.
general, yeah, schooling was like really, 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 really bad. And I feel a little bit, I mean, I wasn't very submissive. I was rebellious at my own in my own way, but I was the teacher's student. I wouldn't say teacher's pet, but I was the favorite, like the favorite student, like the student that teachers really liked and admired. But now when I
Right.
look back, I mean, that wasn't necessarily a good thing, I guess.
Right. I mean, for those students or those of us who did have a healthy rapport with the teachers, it was a
Mm-hmm.
good thing for us, right? They
Yeah,
did treat some of us in a good way, but you see, like school kids from nursery, they hit grade 10, some kids, they spend more time in their schools than they spend with their parents, right?
exactly.
उनीहरूको प्राइमेरी गार्जियन भनेकै टिचर्स हुन्छ कि त्यो phase of life मा, and when they see their teachers passing such kind of comments, like you said, तपाईँको नेपाली टीचरले चाहिँ she was like normally telling people kale mote or labeling
As
or
a joke,
these kind
and as a joke,
as a
like,
joke, right?
yeah.
Right. And obviously, students will laugh because some of them just want to conform with the teacher's joke, right? They would be like, oh, उसले जोक भन्यो भनेपछि हाँस्नु पर्ने होला भन्ने एउटा सोचाइले पनि हाँसिरहेको हुन्छ कति धेरै बच्चाहरू त. And when
Yeah,
you see your teachers who you perceive as your idol, some of us did, right, perceive them as idols. Some of us thought teachers one, they are so cool, or like they have authority over us भन्ने खालको एउटा, there is a power dynamic between a teacher and a students always, at least
right,
till school level, right? So when you see your teachers passing all these insensitive comments and getting away with it, or passing abusive language or abusive body language with students and getting away with it, some of the kids grow up to think that those kind of behavior is normal, right? And they start modeling same kind of behavior with their fellow peers, with their fellow friends. And I've seen a lot of kids, or even hamरै साथीभाइहरू पनि, I've seen a lot of them sometimes passing insensitive comments or calling names like mote, kale, all of that, and being like, I'm just kidding, why are you taking offense on it, right?
exactly.
It's just a joke, like I'm your friend, I can pass such kind of jokes. You see this, there's that boundary is okay to be broken खालको एउटा concept हुन जाँदो रहेछ कि, because you model what you see,
It's
right? घरमा जे
normalized so
हुन्छ,
much.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah. I want to
that is
share.
also.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead, and I'll.
No,
You're done. You're
I
done.
was just gonna, end with the note that what you see as kids is what you learn in the future as adults. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, we've had a unhealthy schooling environment, and some of us have had unhealthy home environment too, which brings a lot of complications later in terms of our behavior and our emotional regulation and all of that things,
yeah,
which we'll touch upon later. So
yeah.
I'd like you
Definitely.
to.
Yeah. I want to. I already shared this with you. So there was this friend. who I was very good friends with, and later on after I came here to the US, she started calling me fat and like, all these like she didn't used to call me fat, but then all of a sudden if she calls me fat, if she calls me moti, of course
Mm-hmm.
it affects me, right? And I've been called fat before, but then I was very, very overweight at that time. And I got ties with her, and later on when I confronted her, her justification was, oh, people call me black, people call me Kali all the time. Why are you taking offense in that? And that's I was like, oh my God, it's not like it's almost like a cycle. Someone's calling me something demeaning, so I might as well take that frustration out on someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little shocking that even as grown-ups, we don't realize how wrong it is and how unaccepting we are of our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of people still do that. But I think we just need to unlearn some things, and Sunny, and
Absolutely.
try and be better humans instead of just justifying our wrong behaviors. And
Absolutely.
whoever's listening, like right now, if you have friends who like call you names, you need to tell them that it's not okay, and you need to correct
Absolutely.
them. I mean, they might not be necessarily bad people, but that's just good people with bad behavior and bad learnings, and they need to unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, again, as you said, set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We might be best of friends, but there are certain things you cannot tell me because that affects me, my
Mm-hmm.
mental health, my mental well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, we talked about schooling a little bit. I want to add this as well. I don't know how relevant that is, but my sister and I, we went to same school. I think we changed schools. I was in grade 7 and she changed schools when she was in grade 5. So like we were in the school at the same time after a certain point, I graduated and she was still in school. And
Mm-hmm.
she used to tell me that the teachers really, really compared her with me, and
Mm-hmm.
that made her life hell. And I recently had a talk with her, like a deep conversation, and she was like her she felt really, really, really bad, and maybe her confidence was also, a little not necessarily shattered, but definitely took a toll on her and her confidence. And I feel really, really bad. And I remember the teachers I used to like, they were the same people who were doing this to my sister. And I'm like, no, I just had such not necessarily wrong image, but I just feel like just because someone's good to you doesn't mean they're good to everyone. And you need
Mm-hmm.
to be careful about who you idolize in your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Right,
So I
right, right.
just wanted to share that as well. And I feel like super bad still. Like I wish I could undo all of that, and I'm pretty sure it
Right.
really affected her mental health.
Exactly. It should be such a difficult task to live up to an expectation that is set in a totally irrational way.
Yeah,
Because your teachers, they okay, you accomplish certain things in your school life and they had set of expectations from you that you fulfilled or whatever the dynamic was, but your sister is a completely different person, right? She's
exactly.
from a completely different even generation, bunny completely different. A lot of variables are changed now. The conventions of what is excelling in school and what is not is also changing
Yeah,
gradually.
yeah,
So it definitely affects a child's mental health or psychosocial well-being when they're being compared like that. And
yeah,
sometimes I feel like teachers or parents or relatives sometimes they have good intentions, right, when they're trying to say these kind of things, but the way they are communicating what they're saying is totally bizarre. Okay, like
yeah,
this is a really funny example, but this is a very general one. Like even sometimes when I'm having a headache or whenever I'm just not feeling generally well, my mom will just come up to me and be like, "तेरे मोबाइल चलाएर भएको or पानी नखाएर भएको," and I know that she has good intentions,
yeah,
but then when I'm already having a headache or when I'm already not feeling well, hearing the comment that I'm not drinking enough water or that I'm not using always on my phone is not very helpful to me, right?
yeah.
So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this all comes under this awareness of what you're communicating to another person, right? And this all comes under how emotionally aware and how emotionally intelligent you are, which was another topic that we wanted
Yeah.
to touch on, right? And before we go on to that, I really wanted to talk about like boundaries and setting boundaries, right? So one
Mm-hmm.
the biggest lesson that I've learned in my 4 years of college is setting boundaries. Like I live by this motto that mental health is an investment, right?
Right.
Like your mental health is never going to be 0 or 100 at any point. Okay? It's always going to fluctuate. You can be feeling um super confident and super ready to take on life one day, and the next day you could be feeling really shitty about
Yeah.
life. And that's a lifelong process of understanding yourself, understanding what resources are available around you that can help you, and just taking care of yourself, um and focusing on your mental health in that way, Banam, no? But then if you start to set boundaries, no matter if it's your friend, your best friend, your family, whoever you are engaging with in terms of your interpersonal relationship, I feel like setting boundaries is absolutely important. And sometimes people perceive boundaries as being selfish के हुन्छ नि ओ मैले नो भने मलाई यो मान्छेले selfish भन्न थाल्छ
Or
होइन
arrogant.
if right arrogant भन्न थाल्छ if I say no to this birthday party they might think that I'm not interested in this friendship, or all of these things, I know. But if you think about it in a certain way, for example, you said no to going to some friend's birthday party because you're not feeling well at the moment, and they are like, "होइन आइज न त भएन भने त रमाइलो हुँदैन." They say something like that, and you still go. You're not having fun in the group, and your friends are not having fun with you either, right? So I feel like setting boundaries is not just important for your own mental well-being, but for people around you too, because whoever you're interacting with, you're going to affect their mental health too, right? Their
Right.
um surrounding or environment or whatever you call it too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is setting boundaries is something that I've been actively working
That's
for the
yeah.
past few months. So I just wanted to share that one before
That's
we moved on.
awesome. Can you share like a little some more examples of setting boundaries? Like as you said, saying no to going to an event because you don't feel the best.
Mm-hmm.
But what could be
Right.
some other, because this is very new to me. I've never like I've heard about setting boundaries, but like that setting boundaries and how it connects to your and your friends' mental health. I've never heard those both terms together. Can you give us like maybe some more examples of what setting
Yeah.
boundaries
Mm-hmm.
look like?
Sure. So I feel like this applies to workplace setting too, which you might relate now because you're really invested in your work too, right? So for example, if your supervisor is just hoarding so much work into your plate that you just cannot complete all of the work, it's okay to reach out to them and be like, hey, this is being too much for me. I feel like XYZ काम चाहिँ मैले गर्न सक्छु यति चाहिँ I can handle it, but if it's going more than this, I'm not going to do it in a productive way, which might affect company को work productiveness पनि नि त भनेर, work productivity पनि नि त भनेर. So you see, setting boundaries in that way gives some kind of control in terms of what you can do as well, and what you can contribute to your surrounding as well, right? So that is an example in a workplace setting. अब फ्यामिलीमै हेर्ने हो भने पनि कहिलेकाहीँ we have family gatherings and we have people coming over, and it's not necessary that every time you might want to go to a party or you might want to attend a function, right? And like I understand that there are priorities and there are some relatives that you cannot absolutely miss their weddings or whatever. But सानो सानो ग्यादरिङ्सहरू स्पेसली हाम्रो नेवारी फ्यामिलीहरूमा सानो सानो ग्यादरिङहरू कति भइरहेको हुन्छ, अनि कहिलेकाहीँ त्यस्तोमा जान मन लागेन भने it's just okay to go confront your parents or whoever your relative and be like, I'm not feeling okay today, so I'm not gonna join भनेर के. Because if you're not feeling your best and if you go to the party or gathering everyone's going to come up to you and be like, के भयो आज तिमीलाई, के भयो आज तिमीलाई, and that's going to be not good, not healthy for you, not helpful for you, and that's going to stir a whole different conversation for the people who are in the gathering pani bhanum na. And while talking about how you're feeling is totally okay, maybe party setting is not something that you want to add that conversation to bhanum na. So these are some little things Um, Maybe that could be an example. I don't know.
Yeah,
Does
these
that
are great examples.
give,
So basically
right?
what I learned is just saying no, having some sort of clarity, and
Mm-hmm.
know your, and at least the other party knows what you're expecting, or what they should
Mm-hmm.
expect from you. So basically having a
Mm-hmm.
clarity, and having an autonomy to say no and to choose where you want to,
Absolutely.
how you want to act. But that's
Mm-hmm.
that's great. This is new stuff. I haven't like heard about this before. Um,
Right.
okay. So we talked about setting boundaries. Do you want to talk a little bit about mindfulness? Because I know we just touched upon how like people used to pass nasty comments and all that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about mindfulness, or toxic behavior, and being consistent with your behavior and stuff like that.
Sure. I guess before going towards mindfulness and
Mm-hmm.
talking about healthy and unhealthy patterns in terms of conversations, maybe we can talk about emotional intelligence or empathy, right?
Right.
Because that is the main concept that ties human behavior in general. Vanuna.
Mhm.
So, in your before, so a question, in your understanding, what is emotional intelligence? So, like,
As you said, empathy, right? Putting yourself in other person's shoes, or
mm-hmm,
just being, again, empathetic, just having some sort of compassion. Um,
right.
and thinking about the consequences. If I say this, how this might affect the other person. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, again, just empathy, putting yourself in their
Absolutely.
shoes. Yeah,
Yeah, that touches on a lot of what emotional intelligence is. Basically, definition on Sarzania, it's the ability to understand your own emotions and others' emotions too. So you're being self-aware about your own emotions,
yeah,
and then at the same time, you're being able to understand consecutively, you're being able to understand or romantic emotions at the same time, right? And so I feel like we've had this trend for a long time in Nepali society where emotions are considered as weakness. Okay? हाम्रो जहिले पनि conversations are if we are talking about um and intense emotions like anger or sadness को कुराहरू गर्यो भने people are always like कस्तो नराम्रो कुराहरू गरेको कस्तो कस्तो
same,
सेन्टी बनाइदिएको ह्या
same,
सेन्टी
yeah,
कुराहरू नगर्न
yeah,
like
yeah.
we hear
I've
that,
heard that a lot. Yes,
right? It's such a
yeah,
common thing for people to just be like, no, 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 we're not talking about sad emotions. We're just going to talk about positive
happy.
optimism and all that, which is a whole different side of toxic positivity, right? Which we might touch upon later, Pani. But then, see, emotions are considered as vulnerability or weakness, and I've heard this a very interesting argument so many times that women are not good decision makers, right? Because they are very emotional भन्ने so like emotions and rationality are चाहिँ polar opposites मा हो भन्ने खालको एउटा idea धेरै सुनेको छु के मैले have you heard about
I've
it?
I've heard I've heard that, yeah, women are emotional, so they don't make good decisions. But
Mm-hmm,
I think it's the exact opposite. If you embrace your emotions, if you're aware of what you're feeling, then
mm-hmm,
that would help you make the best decision ever. That's how I think, right?
absolutely,
If I'm not
absolutely.
aware of myself, how I feel, uh, if I don't embrace what I feel, then how would I be able to make good decisions? And I've heard this a lot as well. So I've always been like that. Like even when I was a kid, I would not always be happy, cheerful. I would always wear my emotions on my sleeve. If I was angry, you
Mm-hmm,
could see it in my face. If I didn't like someone, you could see it in my face. If I was
mm-hmm,
not happy, if I was feeling emotional, I remember I used to cry a lot, even in like class. I used to cry a lot, and people used to be like, "Don't cry," like you don't want to see other people, like you don't
mm,
want to have other people see you cry and all that. And I'm like, why? I want to feel like crying. Why should I go in the corner and cry? Or why should I hold back, go home and then cry? I've never
right,
been like that. I've always been like, you can see that, like, what I'm feeling. But I've had
right,
a lot of people tell me that, oh, like you're too emotional. You like, people
mm,
will think you're weak. And why am I weak? Like, like a person who can embrace their emotions, who knows exactly what they feel, I think they're the strongest people. That's how I feel. But again, like I think, like, as far as I can remember, I've always been told you're too emotional. You need to stop crying. You should not cry so much, or you should not be so angry, or you should not. But I've always, again, I've al not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily an open book, but I've always like been very
Aware,
expressive,
self-aware.
self-aware, and I've always expressed my emotions very well. And
Absolutely.
त्यही सेन्टी कुरा नगर भनेर, like I think in the recent years, probably after coming to the US, for the most of it, I've been very vocal about like issues of like, let's say, sexual assault, this, that, and I'd always try to have these conversations with my childhood friends, and they'd be like, "Isto kura nagar na, like, Ninsani, like, like this is not like." Why not? Like, tell me how you feel about it. If you don't tell me how you feel
Mm-hmm.
about it, how are we gonna expect the world to change, right? It's just,
Absolutely.
yeah, but it gets a little frustrating sometimes when people don't want
Does.
to. I'm pretty sure they have an opinion of that issue, right? They just don't want to share it. They just don't
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about it. But why not?
Right, right.
Why not? Yeah,
Absolutely. So, yeah, like you said, these are really great points. Like you said, being self-aware of your emotions naturally makes you good with dealing with other people's emotions, and which makes your interpersonal relationships better. तिम्रो अरू मान्छेसँग deal गर्ने capacity राम्रो भयो भने त obviously you're doing good in your like you have competency, right? So emotional intelligence directly correlates to critical thinking competency, okay? According to books or okay, according to researches, right? So which completely disregards this myth that we have in the society that emotional boy one it's a weakness. Oh, an emotional man decision making on something. That's a complete what's the
bullshit.
word, myth one bullshit. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's total bullshit. Please don't follow that perception or that concept, people, whoever is listening to this podcast, right? And then like you said, when you were angry or when you're sad and you're crying, त्यो मान्छेहरूले आएर तपाईँलाई don't cry or don't be angry, like मान्छेहरूले के भन्छ, all of this is because people are really afraid of touching upon this topic of emotions because there's a huge stigma around it, like we discussed before. You हाम्रो happy emotions and sad emotions भयो भने चाहिँ यो sad intensity को emotionsहरूको कुरा गर्नै चाहँदैनन् के मान्छेहरू, like everyone tells us don't get angry, रिसाउनु हुँदैन, calm हुनुपर्छ, peaceful हुनुपर्छ. I've even heard comments like, oh, Nepal is a peaceful country, so people should always also be peaceful, like all kind of bullshits like that, right? So angry हुनु हुँदैन भनेर भनिन्छ, but एङ्गरलाई चाहिँ कसरी रेगुलेट गर्ने भन्ने कन्भर्सेसन हुँदैन नि त. Okay, fine, angerले, okay, yeah, it's right that anger eventually causes harm to you, but then how do you regulate that emotion? Because it's
right.
inevitable. Anger is a very normal and a very common emotion that we experience. So how do
Yes,
we regulate it? So all of these conversations fall under emotional intelligence, okay? So yeah, okay, fine, being sad for a prolonged time is not a healthy thing, but how do we go about regulating sadness? How do we approach people who are experiencing sadness or experiencing anger? It should not be a topic of taboo, okay? हुन्छ नि होइन, ए रिसाइरहेको छ यसलाई, रिसाएको बेला बोल्न नजा त्योसँग भनेर भन्छ नि. That's not a healthy thing to do जस्तो लाग्छ के मलाई चाहिँ. Because when a person is angry, it's because something is not there नि त. It's because they want something to happen, their needs are not being fulfilled भनौँ न. So any kind of emotions that you're experiencing is directly reflecting your needs, okay? हाम्रो social science को भाषामा भन्ने हो भने चाहिँ emotions are direct data and they reflect needs of individuals भनेर भनिन्छ के. So you're feeling happy, you're feeling joy, that's because you accomplished something and your body has a need to express that accomplishment, right? Your chemically your body is producing a lot of dopamine, serotonin, and you're feeling like, hey, that's hence you are expressing that joy, you're feeling that joy, right? At the same time, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling sad, that's because something has happened in your life. I know, but maybe you broke up, maybe your mom told you not to use your phone too much, or anything, right? Anything,
mm-hmm.
it could be anything. And that is a direct reflection of what something can be done in a helpful way to you. Maybe you can take control of that situation, maybe someone else can help you take control of that situation. but it's a very normal dynamic भनौँ न, right? हाम्रो even like physiologically पनि एकदम normal हो कि emotions experience गर्नु. Our fight or flight system भन्छ नि हाम्रो, fight or
Mm-hmm.
flight,
Yeah.
right? So that is that system is directly related to your emotions. You feel fear, your fight or flight system is triggered. You experience stress, your cortisol's level go high, and there are physical manifestations of that, right? So यो सबै कुरा एकदम धेरै interconnected छ भने why aren't we talking about emotions in a totally normal way भन्ने
Right.
questions आउँछ क्या त्यहाँ, right? So there's this really really huge need of talking about emotions and emotional intelligence, at least हाम्रो सोसाइटीमा चाहिँ. जस्तै तपाईँले भन्नुभयो नि, you went to the States and it's pretty normal नि, right? Statesमा people asking you how are you, how is the day, and they're very open about talking about good and bad spectrum of things, okay?
Yeah.
They'll openly say like I had a shitty day today, they'll openly talk about it, right? But then here, if you are talking about things like कस्तो नरमाइलो भयो भन्यो भने ए छोड्दै छोड्दै ल let's go and grab a drink, okay, like never mind ल let's watch a movie,
Don't
we
spoil the
focus
mood.
happy.
Uh,
Exactly, हुन्छ नि party pooper नभन, or don't spoil the mood. We hear a lot of comments like this. So yeah, that's that those are some takes on emotional intelligence and emotions in general.
uh-huh.
I talked a lot, like what was going on in your mind when I was saying all of
Yeah.
this?
I have jotted down a few things. So what are is if you're too emotional, does that make you an overthinker? Because I know thinking is not a good thing for the most part. I am
Mhm.
a professional overthinker. I overthink a lot, right? And I think that's also because I feel so much and I'm always expressive about my emotions. I overthink a lot.
Mhm.
And I know, and sometimes I feel like when I overthink, good things happen because I critically analyze so much. I think about, oh, what if I do this? What will happen? And I think that has
Mhm.
kind of helped me professionally a lot, because I'm always analyzing situations.
Mhm.
But again, like in a day-to-day life, overthinking cannot be helpful. Like why did he say that? Or why did she do that? Why did
Mhm.
she not do that? Or just for an example, I met with an old friend and and he told me that when I was in high school, nobody in my class liked me, like no one, they hated me.
Mhm.
And I'm still thinking about it. It was like 7 8 years ago, but I still can, like, why didn't people like me? And maybe I know why, but I was like, I wanted them to like me, why? But I can't go and change it, right? But that overthinker in me gets activated whenever something unpleasant happens or
Mhm.
something unpleasant happens. So, like, is it connected to emotional intelligence or being too emotional, or like, what's your
Mhm.
take on that?
Yeah, so your thoughts are directly connected to your emotions, right? So सबैजनाको emotional regulation or emotional um in intuition भनौँ न, like how much are you in tune with your emotions, त्यो सबैजनाको different हुन्छ, right? Some people
Okay.
experience emotions in a really intense way. Some people might experience it, but then it's easy for them to put it aside from themselves भनौँ न, right? So um usually generally for people who are really in tune with their emotions, it's very normal for them to overthink about situations, because you are thinking about one situations from so many different perspectives. You are thinking about 2009, you're thinking about 2018, you're thinking about the friend that say passed that comment on you, you're thinking about that friends who was who posted an Instagram story 5 months ago, and you're thinking maybe that was related, right? All of this, while your perspective or overthinking does make you prepared for different situations in life. Like you said, professionally, you might have a color coded Excel sheet in your drive because you are just prepared for any kind of shortcomings in your meetings and everything. Like you said, at the same time, it makes life a little tough because you are thinking so much about little situations, right?
Yes.
But I'd like to reiterate this again. Being too emotional or being too much of an overthinker is not a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like again, there are consequences of it.
Yeah.
Now the helpful thing that could be done in this situation is whenever you're having यस्तो पर्सनल सिचुएसन्सहरू हुँदाखेरि तपाईँलाई एकदम ओभरथिङ्क भइरहेछ भने चाहिँ you could think about, okay, so I did something and people reacted to me in a certain way. Like, how much of that is in your control? भनेर सोच्ने के, right?
Mm,
There's only so much of that situation you could control. So fine, your behavior offended a few people in high school, right? But
mm-hmm.
it's gone in the past, right? You
Right,
cannot. The best thing you can do is reflect on how you were in high school, and if there are behaviors that you think that has changed, great thing that you could change, maybe you can work on it. But
right,
how your friend felt about that past situation, you don't really have a control over it.
right.
And the best thing you can do about that is either apologize to him if you think that an
Oh
apology
no,
is
no, no, it
necessary,
wasn't
right?
like that. No, no, I
Right.
think yeah,
Oh, okay, all
to
right, all
apologize
right.
गर्नुपर्ने खालको थिएन. It was just like
Okay,
people didn't
okay.
like my personality. Oh,
Okay,
nothing that I didn't do, nothing that I did or offended anyone. People
right.
just did like my personality because I was really loud. You know how I was in
Uh-huh.
Cebu, very loud, very
Mm-hmm.
expressive, authoritative,
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. So just people did like my
Mm-hmm.
personality, basically. Yeah, it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
nothing like I don't think I have anything to apologize for to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So putting that whole, I'm sorry about
Okay.
that misunderstanding,
Oh no, no, no,
putting
it's
that
okay. It's okay.
whole part aside. So yeah, it can add to your growth in a way that you're reflecting
Yeah.
on your behavior and everything. And maybe if you think what you did was justified, and if you think
Yeah.
that this is me and I'm not going to change myself, that's all right too, right? So I don't know how much of your question I answered in
You
that
did,
whole
you
conversation.
did, you did. I
But
think when
yeah.
you said how much of that was under my control, I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
change my personality just for people to, just for me to make people
Right,
like me, right? So I think,
right.
I mean, I have no apologies. I mean, I was the way I was. I have
Mm-hmm.
progressed as a person. I've become a much better person. But then at that
Absolutely.
time, was that the best I could be? Yes, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was the best I
Right.
could. Um,
Yeah, that's
I have a follow-up question on this, right? So overthinking, I know, but I feel like my mind is never resting. Like I have constantly have something or the other going on. Like
mm-hmm.
I am a multitasker, but I think that I
Mm-hmm.
am now that I think I'm a multi-thinker as well. Even when I'm doing something, like even when I talk, there's
Mm-hmm.
constantly something or the other going on in my head. So is that necessarily a
Mm-hmm.
good thing, or I don't know? Like I I thought everyone was like that, but then I've had conversations with people. They're like, "What are you
Mm-hmm.
thinking?" I don't have my mind is blank. I don't have any thoughts in my head. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, what's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
me? Like, why do I have these constant thoughts in my head?
Mm-hmm.
What do you
No,
have to say?"
yeah, the same thing. It also ties the same conversation that we had organic question mapani. For someone who is really in tune with their emotions and awareness of what you're feeling at the present and what happened in the past, what's going to happen in the future, it's totally normal to be thinking all of this at the same time because your brain is constantly preparing yourself for the future. It's thinking about
Yeah,
the past, it's also taking in all this stimulus in the present. So I feel like no one can have nothing on their mind at any time, right?
really?
Unless you are under some influence or anything, right? It's
Yeah.
it's totally like, because even right now I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you, I'm seeing the screen, I'm seeing my curtains, I'm seeing my closet, I'm seeing so many things, I'm hearing sounds of the pot clanking in my neighbor's kitchen, right? So there can never be nothing on your mind, right?
Mm,
So it's totally normal if people are just some people can just be shanta and not think about anything, right? But for some people like us who are overthinkers and who are really in tune with their environment, who are really in tune with their senses, it's totally normal to feel all those kind of things, right? But if यो एकदम तपाईँको यो सोच्ने पेसले चाहिँ तपाईँलाई एकदमै गाह्रो भइरहेछ भने there are certain things that can be done like mindfulness exercises grounding exercises right? Just to not have your brain be in a furry and all over the place, okay? Right? So those that also kind of ties into mindfulness and
right.
thinking about what you're saying to others, or that was a different topic that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that would be my understanding on your situation.
That's great. I think I just had a mini therapy session with you. But that's very helpful. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk about this more personally for sure,
Yes,
Prasanni.
yes, definitely, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not
Mhm.
gonna reveal all my secrets here. Just kidding. Um,
Exactly. Let's.
yeah. And that would be like it would take an entire day also. Like if I started like Zani, expressing what I feel. Okay. There was another thing that I picked from what you were sharing a while ago.
Mhm.
How you said मम्मीले phone धेरै नचलाऊ भनेर it affects you भनेर होइन.
Mhm.
I've been very observant of this fact that certain things, or not certain things, different things affect different people very differently. So maybe phone not allow maybe you're like whatever, but that same thing might be so like that might affect me very deeply and differently. And I think people don't
Mhm.
realize that. Okay? Ani, I used to do like I was in this organization and a leadership. Some like I don't want to say the whole thing, but
Mhm.
I was in that program, and there was one of the tasks that we need to complete about how different personalities are affected differently. And there was this one line. Okay, it's so
Mhm.
popular to this is a very popular saying, treat people the way you want to be treated. I know this is what we hear a lot, but in that
Mhm.
particular program, in that particular activity we're supposed to do, there was a line that said, treat people the way they need to be treated. Okay, I
Mhm.
think this is very, very important. Like, because
Yeah.
the way you want to be treated, maybe that person doesn't want to be treated that way in that particular situation or ever.
Mhm.
And you need to
Right.
understand
Right.
their needs. And Sunny,
Mhm.
gathering intelligence about them and their needs. And
Mhm.
I just feel like people don't realize this. Just like that incident, like where my friend, somebody called her Kali, and maybe it doesn't affect her the same way, so she called me Moti, but
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
that affects me, like being mocked upon my personality or my body type or my how I
Mhm.
am at that point in time affects me.
Mhm.
And I think people need to be aware of this very much, because you never
Absolutely.
know, maybe you're scarring people in a very normal
Deep
conversation.
way.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm, absolutely. Yeah, this brings us back to this conversation of empathy, right? So,
yeah,
putting yourself in the other person's shoes and on being like, okay, like this person could be in the worst of worst situation, right? So
right,
you have to be very mindful about what you're telling people, and I feel like collectively as human beings, we really need to unlearn our old patterns of communicating and
right,
need to learn and adapt healthy patterns. Okay, जस्तो तपाईँले भन्नुभएको जस्तो like your friend was like, oh, why are you taking offense? I'm just calling you Moti, that's it, right? I'm calling it out
mm-hmm.
of love भनेर भन्यो अरे. That's not something that you want, right? Her
Yeah,
intention might be showing love, but your need is not hearing that label at that moment. So
yeah,
your friend should have been okay about it, and your friend should have been supportive of your boundaries and your needs, and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize it affected you that way. I'll try and I'm not gonna call you that name ever, right? See, so for example, even when you're sharing some kind of situations with your friend, you suppose you are my friend अनि तपाईँले मलाई के भनिराख्नु भएको छ भने के अरे our first if you're sharing problems to me, our first response very generally is giving suggestions, okay, right? Right, you might be needing suggestions when you are expressing your problems. You might have a lot of suggestions in your mind that might be helpful to the other person, but त्यो मान्छेको लागि त्यति बेला suggestions hearing advices might not be their need, okay.
mm,
This brings us to this topic of active listening. Active listening is something that people should absolutely practice अहिलेको सिनमा जस्तो लाग्छ है मलाई,
yeah,
because generally when people are sharing their emotions, sharing their problems with you, it's usually because they're coming from a place of need to be heard, okay, right? I've had so many conversations with people where they're just like, nobody understands me, like I don't share what I feel with people because they don't really listen to me, like they're listening to me but not really listening to me भनिरहन्छ,
mm-hmm.
okay. And another thing we do as human beings, and this all of this is very normal, like suggestions we know. Another thing that we generally do is whenever someone's sharing something with us, we'll be like, मेरो पनि यस्तै भएको थियो। मैले पनि एकचोटि यस्तै गरेको थिएँ। मेरो त झन् 104 को ज्वरो आएको थियो। व्हेन पिपल आर लाइक मेरो 101 को ज्वरो आएछ। मैले त झन् स्कुलमा पनि हाई स्कुलमा पनि स्कलरसिप पाएको थिएँ। अल अफ दिस इट्स कल्ड narcissistic conversational shifting भन्छ है, in a very academic terming. And I'm not saying that people who do this are narcissists. I'm not saying that, absolutely caution. I'm just saying that यो हाम्रो एकदम पहिलेदेखि चलिआएको कन्भर्सेसनल प्याटर्न्सहरू हो कि, बिकज
Mm,
पिपल ट्राई टु फाइन्ड रिलेटेबिलिटी इन एभ्रिथिङ एन्ड इट्स भेरी नर्मल। मान्छेहरूले कुरा गरिराख्छ, मलाई रातो साडी मनपर्छ भन्यो भने ओ मेरो घरमा रातो कार छ भन्नु इट्स टोटली नर्मल, बिकज माइन्डमा रातो रातो कनेक्ट हुन्छ, राइट? बट त्यो एउटा एकदम फनी इक्जाम्पल भयो। बट इफ समवन इज कमिङ टु यु एन्ड टेलिङ यु द्याट ओ मेरो रातो साडी त हिजो राति it caught a fire and I lost my rato sari. I'm so sad about it. You don't go to that person and say, "Oh, मेरो घरमा रातो कार छ," or you don't say like, "गएर पसलमा रातो साडी किन्न त," right? Even though those are very normal things that might come up to our mind, our
mm-hmm.
first response should always be like, "That must be really difficult for you to lose your favorite sari," right? Now I'm giving a very general example of a sari,
Yeah,
but this could be
yeah,
an analogy for all kind of life situations. So you see, तपाईँले भन्नुभएको जस्तो what you think might be right for a situation might not be right for the other person. That is why you listen. That is why you ask what's helpful for you. What can I call you and what can I not call you? That is why अहिले pronouns or आइरहेछ she, her, he, him. That's also a general concept of empathy and being mindful about how you're talking to other people,
right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm very guilty of doing that. I do that a lot. Like whenever someone shares something, I want to,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a normal, again, as you said, normal human behavior to feel like Anthony,
Mm-hmm.
like as if we have
Mm-hmm.
something in common, or to share like how relative my
Mm-hmm.
situation is to your situation. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
definitely going to be mindful of that. And as you said,
Right.
suggestions. I think I've been guilty of that as well. Whenever people, I think it's like
Mm-hmm.
our first, the way our brain works. If somebody is like venting, we're like, oh, they're asking for suggestions, but they might just want to be
Mm-hmm.
heard, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. Okay.
Right. So if a person wants suggestion, it's absolutely okay to give them suggestions. I know sometimes when a person is venting, they either they just want to be heard and either they just want to let things out, or they want genuine suggestions that can help them, right? And you are coming from a really good intention when you're offering people suggestions, right? But
Yes.
sometimes they just don't want it, right? So like I said before, it's always okay and it's always helpful to ask, like whenever a friend is coming up to you and venting about things, it's always good to ask, do you just want to talk about it, or can I offer you some suggestions भनेर. And it might sound so cheesy, I know, कस्तो formal पाराले बोलेको or whatever, it might feel like that. But even
Mm-hmm.
in a casual way, you could be like, तँलाई प्रब्लम भेन्टमा त गर्न मन लागेको हो कि म के भनौँ, म के अफर गरौँ, हेल्प अफर गरौँ, यसरी पनि त भन्न सकिन्छ नि त,
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
normal casual conversations.
You've done
So
that to me
that
before, haven't you?
I
I just
have.
remembered, yeah. But
Yeah, that is.
but that was so unique, and I felt so respected in a way, that this person actually cares as though.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Exactly, like you
yeah.
mentioned, respect, right? And you're
Hmm.
not taking away the autonomy from the other person. Okay, तिमीलाई सुन्दिने मान्छे चाहिएको हो कि तिमीलाई हेल्प चाहिएको हो भन्दा उसले चुज गर्न पायो नि त. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, fine, I might be in a really crucial situation. I might be having a financial crisis, and you might be an expert in finance. But still, at that situation too, I think it's very important for a financial expert to come up to me and ask, do you just want to vent, or can I offer you some suggestions भनेर. And oftentimes after people are done venting, they will naturally go towards problem solving, okay? But it's very
Right.
important to have that distinction before, Sunny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need to recognize what stage they are in, the person who's on the other side. That's super important. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. I think
Mm-hmm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
gold. This is like,
And you don't have to feel guilty about doing all this before, because it's very normal, right? हाम्रो पेरेन्ट्सहरूले पनि त्यसरी नै कुरा गरेको देखेको छ, जताततै पनि त्यसरी नै कन्भर्सेसन्सहरू भइरहेको हुन्छ. So it's not a bad thing भनौँ न, but it's important to recognize that this is helpful instead of this, and I'll
Mm.
try to adapt
Improve that
this.
behavior
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I will definitely
Exactly.
improve that behavior. This is not good. I feel like, because
Mhm.
we don't realize sometimes we're on the other side and we just don't
Mhm.
realize that, Janjani, we just don't think
Mhm.
about it as much, I guess. But this is super,
Mhm.
super helpful.
Mhm.
Did we cover mindfulness already? I think we did somehow, like
Yeah,
emotional
this
intelligence,
somehow. Mhm.
yeah, okay. Toxic behavior also we covered it.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about therapy now? I think now we can
Sure.
talk about therapy, and I have
Sure.
been, before we even get started, I have been considering going to therapy for the longest time, and I think I will in a few months or so. I just have other
Yay.
physical health issues to tackle right now.
Mhm.
But I've had people who've been so resistant of not going to therapy,
Mhm.
and I am all for it. I haven't been to a therapy session, but I just feel like it's like I don't think I think it's worth a try, but I just don't understand why people are resisting it so much. Again, and
Mhm.
I think, as you said, it's to do with like people being vulnerable and they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to express their emotions, and that's why they don't want to go to therapy. But just tell us a little bit about why therapy is important, your take on it,
Mhm.
and why people should consider it. Yeah.
Sure. So therapy is really, really important because when you have any physical health related issues, you go to a doctor, right?
Hmm.
If you have fever, if you have dengue, which is very relevant right now in Nepal, if you
Yeah.
have COVID, or if you have anything relatively concerning in terms of your physical health, you go to a doctor because you know that if you don't address it, it's going to get worse, right? In the same way, if you are stressed over a situation, if you are confused over anything in life, if you feel like your needs are not being addressed, or whatever might be bothering your psychosocial state of mind or your mental health, it's very important to go to therapy.
Hmm.
First thing, why is because you could be talking to your friends, right? But not everyone has those kind of skills, like we mentioned before, active listening, not jumping into suggestions and everything. And we all are human beings who are just trying to improve, right? A person who does not have educational background in counseling might be a really empathetic person. They might be really willing to help, but they might not have all the skills to be a support system for a person who's really in need. That is why therapy is important. That is why going to a counselor, to a therapist, or even a psychiatrist if medications is needed is important. Now, the reason why there's such a big stigma around therapy is because people consider emotions as weaknesses, and there's this whole thing of, oh my god, you're going to therapy, like,
You've lost your
there's
mind.
a
Have you
whole,
gone
yeah,
crazy? Have you gone like cuckoo?
have you
Yeah.
gone डिप्रेसन भयो के भयो तिमी डिप्रेस भयो हुन्छ नि लाइक मेन्टल हेल्थ इस्यु भन्ने बित्तिकै द थिङ द्याट वी रिजोर्ट टु अ लट अफ अस इभन मी इभन लाइक 4 years ago, if you ask me what is
Yeah.
mental health, I'd be telling you anxiety, depression. That's it. That's how limited our vocabulary was, could be a lot of people in terms of mental health, because it's not talked about a lot,
Mm.
especially in Nepal. A lot of people have zero ground knowledge about psychology and mental health and all of these things. And then people also have this attitude that, no, I'll go to the gym and it'll be okay. No, I will go party every Friday night and it'll be okay. They think that other form of outlets might be better than going to therapy. While sometimes it might be helpful. I am not saying exercising or partying out with friends might not be helpful. For some situation, that might work. Go out for it if it works, right? But if you notice that it's nothing is helping, talking to your friends is not helping, uh, weightlifting is not helping, cycling is not helping, then you should definitely consider therapy. And especially now, therapy is relatively accessible than before. Like, I know that in United States, once you get a job, health insurance makes sure that employees are having therapy in some places, or few places, or most places. त्यो number चाहिँ मलाई थाहा भएन.
Mhm.
Even in Nepal right now, we do have places where therapies offered, like the place I'm working in, Mankakura. We have Healthy Minds. We have other networks like Psych Bigyan. Um, and people are gradually being sensitized to this whole topic of mental health and therapy. But as long as we don't have open conversations like this that we're doing right now, it's still going, there's still going to be a lot of stigma and a no around
Mm-hmm.
therapy and health in general. So,
Yeah. I feel like people now, I know the buzzword one, Sunny, mental health is one of the buzzwords right now, but I feel
mm-hmm,
people assume the extreme end of that mental health spectrum. कि depression है bhayera, you have to go to therapy. Anxiety ne bhayera,
mm-hmm,
you have to go to therapy. Or something is extremely wrong, so you have to go to therapy. But Sunny, as you said, your
mm-hmm,
mental health is always like that. And Sunny, I might not be
mm-hmm,
like, feeling like 0 out of 100 or 1 out of 100.
mm-hmm,
I might be somewhere in the 20s and 30s, but maybe it's still affecting me. So maybe I want to go to therapy. But people are not
mm-hmm.
open to that. And I wish that people really changed that. And
Right.
yeah, but again, some people are just very, very reluctant um,
They are.
to
They are,
go to
and
seek help. Yeah,
exactly. So help seeking uh behavior चाहिँ अहिले एकदम राम्ररी डेभलप भइसकेको छैन मान्छेहरूमा, right? Because they feel like, no, it'll be okay with some other form of other methods that I can do भन्ने जस्तो. Sometimes, like even one therapy session can bring you so much clarity,
yeah,
because your therapist, your counselor, whoever you meet, is this unjudgmental third person perspective. They're giving you this unjudgmental third person perspective, which you'll
right,
not get from a friend or coworker who knows things about you. So you
right.
can be like totally vulnerable in front of them. You can like share anything. All of them have this confidentiality agreement, and they don't share anything with anyone unless you are in danger of self harm, or you're in danger of harming others, or
Right.
there's case of child abuse or domestic violence. Therapists don't really share anything with anyone. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you can go there. It's like your own space. You're allowed to say anything, you're allowed to do anything, and these professionals will help you figure things out. And I've been to therapy for a long time, and it has helped me so much for my personal growth, right? So I'm a big advocate for therapy, and naturally I'm working to be a therapist too. So yeah, for whoever is listening to this, if you just have this little hunch, therapy जाऊँ कि नजाऊँ भनेर, please consider going it once. If you think it doesn't work for you, just don't go. It's as simple as that,
Yeah.
you go. If it doesn't work for you, you discontinue. If it works for you, you
Yeah.
continue going to
Also,
therapy.
I mean, I have heard about this a little bit. Also, you can like find your like what works for you. Like if you go to a therapy session, maybe that
Mm-hmm,
therapist is not the right fit for you. So you can probably
mm-hmm.
try a different one. Um,
Yeah.
so they keep experimenting. Like we try so much to reinstate our like physical health and Sunny. I think we should
Mm-hmm.
give give our mental health the same priority as the Laksa and Sunny. And again,
Absolutely.
I definitely feel like with my personal experience how physical and mental
Mm-hmm,
health are correlated.
mm-hmm.
But definitely whoever's listening, definitely worth a
Yeah.
try. And I will be definitely trying soon. And I'll be one of those people who will be sharing it on Instagram probably. You my first therapy session, blah blah blah.
I'm rooting for that. I'm absolutely rooting
Yeah,
for that.
yeah,
Another
definitely.
thing, Paul Sadi, that I've noticed people talking about is like नेपालको कन्टेक्स्टमा नेपालमा फिजिकल हेल्थ नै राम्ररी फुलफिल भएको छैन भने मेन्टल
Mm,
हेल्थको बारेमा कसरी कुरा हुन्छ त भन्ने कुरा के,
right.
लाइक त्यो म्यास्लोज हायरार्की चार्ट हुन्छ नि एउटा,
Mm,
where you fulfill your physical needs first, right? And then you go towards safety and psychological needs. नेपालमा के अरे हस्पिटल्सहरूको त अभाव छ, अनि बेडहरूको त अभाव छ भने how are you gonna talk about mental health भन्ने खालको आर्गुमेन्ट एकदम धेरै सुन्छु कि म मान्छेहरूबाट. But if you look at so this is Nepal Policeको recent statistics, right? On an average, just reported suicide cases Nepalma, on an average, trigger warning to whoever listening, it's average 14 to 20 people a day Nepalma, they're
wow.
dying because of suicide, right? They're committing suicide. And this is this is an absolute spike which we have observed in the course of 5 years. Okay, so pandemic पछिको data हेर्ने हो भने नेपाल पुलिसको reported data मात्र, unreported data the कति छ people don't report cases in Nepal because of stigma, obviously, right? So in the course of 5 years, there have been more than 26,000 cases of suicidal deaths in Nepal, right?
Wow.
Another shocking fact, um, this spike that we've observed in the last 5 years, the increase of suicidal rates in women was almost 200%. Okay, right? And
Wow.
that also shows, I know that also shows how mental health of women or people identifying as females are being affected in Nepal, right? Which is a
Yeah.
different conversation. Let's not go in there. But अब यस्तो striking data हामी देखिरहेको छौँ. We're seeing this concerning data. भनेपछि I think that whole argument of physical health first, mental health second, comparison पनि गर्नु पर्दैन के. When you are seeing that this data is out there and this data is so concerning, I think it's high time that we consider talking about suicide. We consider talking about therapy, mental health, and just creating healthy environment for people around us, for our loved ones, for any other human being that we interact with.
Mm.
Yeah. So and another reason, one of the main reasons why I'm going on a personal tangent here, right? But like I was doing a lot of research on mental health in Nepal and suicide data and suicidal interventions in Nepal, and all of this data and all of this need versus lack of accessibility in Nepal was the main reasons why I thought like I needed to come back and work here. And I think I had a conversation with you,
Yeah.
brief conversation about this too. But then if you see in the states, like there are state mandated suicide hotlines. Okay, like तपाईँले आफ्नो कलेजमा पनि देख्नुभयो होला suicide hotlines numbers भनेर जता पनि हुन्छ, right?
Yeah.
There's accessible resources, police is in place, emergency resources are in place, homeless shelters are in place. I've worked in suicide hotline in the states for 2 years, and I have some extent knowledge on how well the system is in place for suicidal intervention or to help people who have suicidal ideations in the states. Okay, and
Mm.
then when I was researching Nepal, which was like 6 months ago, त्यति बेला खासै धेरै त्यस्तो केही भइसकेको थिएन. There were a few hotlines, but then 24/7 running hotlines चाहिँ थिएन. Okay, now this is a good news. हामीले धेरै सिरियस कुराहरू गरिसक्यौँ. A good news that नेपालमा चाहिँ अहिले 1166 भन्ने 24/7 रनिङ हटलाइन चाहिँ January February New Year's देखि चाहिँ actively running छ. Like
That's great.
anyone from any part of Nepal, they can call in 1166. And we do have a system in place. त्यस्तो धेरै strong छैन हैन, बाहिर जस्तो एकदम police department connected, well connected, accessible resources छैन. But then things are gradually improving in Nepal, and um, like all of this data shows that how much work still needs to be done in terms of intervention and yeah, rescue and just mental health in general.
Mm. Definitely. Yeah. So I've always thought about this, like the suicide hotlines. Is that for people who see someone who's about to like harm themselves? Or I'm just thinking like if I as a person, and this is like I'm just giving an example. If I as a person is planning to take my life, like why would I call? Like I
Yeah,
have
that is a
this is
very
just like something I have thought about. Like okay, the suicide hotlines or it's how like they're aware of it,
Mhm,
but like if I want in the brink of ending my life, like why would I pick up a
mhm,
phone and Sunny? Like I
yeah.
just don't understand like the मान्छेको माइन्डमा चाहिँ के भइरहेको हुन्छ भनेर के नि maybe you have a better
Mhm.
idea. I just want to know like what happens.
That's a very valid question, and I was curious about this whole thing too before I started working in the hotline. I was like, someone who wants to take their own life, why would they call me, right? So who is absolutely in despair and who is absolutely decided that I'm going to attempt suicide, they are not going to call. Obviously, unfortunately, they're going to take that step. But majority मान्छेलाई चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दा taking your own life is a big deal. It's a really scary thing, right? हामीलाई अलिकति घाउ भयो भने त हामी कस्तो डराउँछौँ. Why do we get scared? Because everything is related to a fear of death, right? That's a very philosophical topic. Let's not touch over that, but taking your own life is a big deal. And whenever people are committing suicide or planning suicide or having suicidal ideations, it comes with this intense fear, right? Like, oh my God, why am I thinking this way? Maybe there's something it comes with a lot of confusion. It comes with a lot of difficulty when you're having suicidal ideations. So at that time, people do seek for help, okay? Or at least people who do call in the hotlines, they're always seeking for help. There's always hope. त्यो मान्छेले फोन उठाएर हटलाइन कल गर्यो भन्ने बित्तिकै there's little part of them that wants to live भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ बुझिन्छ भनौँ न, right? So we it felt really nice to be working in a hotline and knowing that okay, there's something that can be done in this situation, Manida. And sometimes people called and people just one call could change a whole scenario, right? Something people would just have ideation matra, and they would talk to us, and we would just listen, and they would feel better. Sometimes people were in very extreme situations where they were they had plans or they had resources to commit the plan, and sometimes we could intervene. Sometimes unfortunately things were not in our control, right? Sometimes we could not intervene, and that's a part of what goes into suicide intervention and all.
Yeah,
But that also reinstates this need for these hotlines or interventions in place, because out of 10 people who are having suicidal ideations, even if we can say 4, that is a great success जस्तो लाग्छ क्या मलाई चाहिँ.
right.
So yeah.
So, thank you for all that information. I've always been like suicide cheese. I've seen a lot of posts and I've read a little bit about it. Are all the people who commit suicide depressed,
Mm-hmm.
or is it that something like snaps and they're like, "Well, I'm gonna take my life"? Is there like a certain variation in those people who are like suicide victims, or is it always like they're thrown in the deep end, they're super depressed and they don't see any hope with their life?
Mm-hmm.
What's the
Now,
dynamic?
Um, so this brings us back to this whole conversation of how different people have different emotional intuitions, emotional regulation, and everything, right? You might be feeling like the life of the party at one moment, and you could be feeling suicidal at another moment, right? People can have that spectrum of um, emotions. At the same time, like you said, generally people who are in really dis were in like deep distress or were really depressed and they don't see a point of improvement in their life, they have suicidal ideations. But on the other spectrum, people who are feeling totally fine can also have suicidal ideations in the other moment, okay? Right?
Wow.
So more than we expect or more than we talk about it, um suicidal ideations having suicidal ideations is totally normal, you know? Like some, like you could be a well performing kid, you could be doing everything right, अनि कुनै आन्टीले आएर तिमीलाई तिमी त कस्तो मोटा छौ भन्नु भने, even that could be your breaking point. You never know, right? So so like we talked about before, being mindful about what you say. Why is it important, Mala? This is the reason, okay? Because having suicidal ideation is very normal. People have it, it passes, it does pass a few times, it passes, but sometimes it stays with you and it might come back to you. You don't कहिले के हुन्छ नै थाहा हुँदैन के. त्यही भएर
Mm,
that is why we have these accessible resources in place, and that is why we talk about mental health, we talk about therapy and all of this, because it's very normal than we think. And more than mental health and therapy, there's big stigma in suicide जस्तो लाग्छ है मलाई चाहिँ. People, they are scared about बोल्न पनि डर लागिरहेको हुन्छ मान्छेहरूलाई. सेन्सिटिभ टपिक हो नि त सुसाइड भनेको. सो के भन्ने नभन्ने खालको क्वेसन पनि भइरहेको हुन्छ मान्छेलाई. बट it's okay to have conversations, right, with people who are knowledgeable about it. It's
yeah.
okay to ask questions about it in a helpful way, in a very neutral way, and it should be talked about. Yeah, like we're having this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I don't know, it's a little coincidental, sadly coincidental, but one of my best friends, his cousin committed, I think, did I mention this? I haven't, I guess. He committed suicide, I think, a few days ago, and And my best
That's
friend shared with
awful.
me that his cousin told him that I think had similar conversations, like he doesn't see point in like living and all that, and but
Mm-hmm.
he told me that he thought that he was just like sad step, but
That's
eventually
awful.
he
Mm-hmm.
did. But yeah, again,
Yeah.
but I
And
think that
like you, mhm.
yeah, go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead.
No, like you were mentioning before, if you're a third person, if you know someone who's feeling suicidal, you can also call the hotlines. Like तपाईको अघि question थियो, like it's not just the person who's having suicidal ideation. Suicidal hotlines happily accept people who are reporting concerns too, and they do everything they can help. Right? Even you can even go to a psychiatrist or therapist and inform, like if your friend has suicidal ideation and you don't know where to go, start with any professional or any resource you think might help, okay? Because even though एउटा मान्छे त्यो तपाईँले रिच आउट गर्नुभएको इन्स्टिट्युसन अर मान्छेले हेल्प गर्न सकेन भने पनि दे क्यान कनेक्ट यु टु अदर रिसोर्सेस द्याट क्यान हेल्प. So if you hear suicidal ideations, if you hear people saying things like I don't see hope, मलाई बाँच्नु छैन अब, I can't do this anymore, it's good to intervene, right? I know sometimes it might feel like usko life ho, ulle नराम्रो लाग्यो भने के हुन्छ भन्ने, but it's always okay to be safe than sorry जस्तो लाग्छ है मलाई चाहिँ. It's always helpful to intervene and take that step rather than not doing anything about it, and you might
Feeling
be
sorry
पछि
later.
गएर yeah exactly.
That's interesting. Yeah, forever, whoever is listening, this might be a little heavy, but again, it's a very, very important
Mm-hmm.
conversation, and we don't talk
Mm-hmm.
enough about it. We definitely don't talk enough about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And especially when you know that your friend or whoever you're talking to has suicidal ideations, please don't give them suggestions. यसमा एकदमै ठुलो role खेल्छ the whole conversation that we had. Please listen to them. Don't silver line things, right? We have this tendency to silver line and be like, at least you have this. मेरो रातो साडी जल्यो भने at least you have a blue sari. Don't do
Yeah,
that. मेरो रातो साडी जल्यो भने कुन चाहिँ कन्ट्रीको मान्छेहरूसँग साडी पनि छैन. Please don't do that. That's not helpful at all,
yeah,
right? Absolutely not helpful. Like people who are having these kind of really intense thoughts, they are in a very vulnerable stage. So anything other than listening and comfort and support might be triggering for them. So please do not do that. Ani, if you know that you don't have the capacity to help them or listen to them, because sometimes we don't, right? Suicide ko topic is heavy, even for anyone भनौँ न. अनि if you feel like म चाहिँ सुन्न सक्दिनँ जस्तो लाग्यो भने refer them to a professional who can
right.
listen to them, who have the capability. You don't have to help everyone who you come across with. So it's okay to set boundaries in that way too. Like we come back to setting boundaries, right? If you
Yeah,
don't have the capability to actively listen to a person, you can just be like, hey, I'm not in a space to listen myself, but I could help you by doing XYZ भन्न सकिन्छ नि त.
don't
So yeah.
ignore at least probably like
Yeah,
yeah, don't
absolutely
ignore.
not. Mm-hmm.
Mm, just stop me if this is like not related, but I know you mentioned a little bit about like being under the influence, and we've had this conversation before. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the person who I'm talking about, I don't know if I should share this or not, but let's just say, in general, right?
Hype.
Yeah, let's say a person who does drugs, or who's like
Mm-hmm.
exposed to all these stuff that takes you to a different world, and makes
Mm-hmm.
you get you whatever is happening in your current life. Do you think
Mm-hmm.
that's helpful? Because I've had a few people who tell me that that helps them, not necessarily drugs,
Mm-hmm.
but like weed and marijuana and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is like, for whoever's listening, whoever thinks that this is helpful, I just want you to maybe tell them if it's helpful or not, and how much of it is helpful,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
needs to be taken care of. If
Mm-hmm.
you were to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not an expert in terms of substance abuse or drugs
Yeah,
or
oh, that's the word I
alcohol,
was
and
looking for, substance
right.
abuse. Yeah, sorry.
Right, right. I'm not an expert, so whatever I'm saying right now is based on my whatever, how much of knowledge I have, right?
Yeah.
So alcohol and drugs, they do uh, detach you from reality sometimes, and
Right.
drugs sometimes they can even take you more in tune with your emotions and your reality and everything, right? Medically चाहिँ कति धेरै ड्रग्सहरू they can be helpful भनेर भनिन्छ. People microdose on certain drugs because it helps them with their concentration. Drugs have been microdosing or like um, proportions or milated drugs have been helpful in treating various neurological disorders and everything. There have been
Hmm.
researches and everything on that, right? But on a day-to-day basis, I think I know what kind of consumption you're talking about, hitting a roll or rolling a joint or
Yeah.
getting wasted and all of that.
Yeah.
Um, if you're so I feel like doing that is not necessarily addressing what is what is the situation at the
It's
moment.
not going to
It
the root
might,
cause of your
yeah,
sadness, basically.
exactly. Yeah, it might, you might be sad and you might think like, oh, more so and it might take my sadness away. Maybe temporarily it might buzz you up and you might be vibing to a song and having fun. But that root cause of your need is still there, Nita. You're sad because your your emotional need is expressing something, but you're not
Yeah.
addressing that, right?
Yeah.
So okay, fine, like even if it works for someone, even if drugs and alcohol works for someone, it's not necessarily that it might work for the other person, right?
Yeah.
So if it works for you, I don't think it's helpful or healthy to go out and be like, I know, take a hit of weed, you'll be fine. Take a shot of tequila or vodka, and you'll be fine. That's not okay at all.
Yeah.
Might have worked for you, might not work for the other person because you and them are totally different people, Nita. So
Yeah.
that's my take
Yeah,
on it.
thank you. I just wanted to mention that because I personally have been against all that, and I'm not saying those the people who consume it are wrong, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
it has been glamorized so much, especially like, oh, weed has medical benefits, this, that. But
Uh-huh.
at the end of the day,
Right.
I think if you're addicted to something, no matter
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is, the addiction is the problem, I know. I think
It
people
is.
are kind of just turning a blind eye to that and just sticking to, oh, it has medical benefits, so I might as
Mm-hmm.
well do it. But if you're
Yeah.
doing it like constantly, if you're addicted to
Mm-hmm.
that substance, and the moments when you're present in your life are like just very little, and the moments when you're high is like taking over your
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
that's I just feel that's not a good thing. But whenever I say this, people are like,
Yeah.
no, it has medical benefits. Like, it's not like it has been proven that it
That's
has medical benefits. But at the end of the day, again, it's addiction. But just wanted to like mention that so that people at least think
mm-hmm.
about it. It's any people who are
Right,
consuming it, not
absolutely.
consuming it, or
Mm,
considering it. Just again, as you said, just know
mm-hmm,
your like know how it reacts with you and your body. And just because it works for
mm-hmm.
someone else might not work the same for you.
Exactly. Like that's a way of rationalizing the stubborn laksa in Malay when
Yeah,
people are like,
yeah,
oh, but it has medical benefits. A lot of things have medical benefits, but it medical benefits हुने कुरा त medical professionalलाई सोधेर मात्र use गरिन्छ होला नि त हैन. Like I had a few conversations with some people, like they were like I'm feeling very low in life and all of this and that, and there's a certain drug which is found in Brazil, अनि त्यसले चाहिँ पुरै it gives you a whole different perspective on existence रे, अनि यस्तो रे यस्तो रे, अनि 2-3 वर्षपछि म गएर I'll do that drug and everything will be sorted out भनेर भने के. And then I was like, okay, fine, you could go to Brazil in 2-3 years and go do that drug, it might work for you, but we do have um counselors and therapists in school, right? And therapy and counseling has been proved, if we are talking about proving and all, it has been proved to heal so many issues. It has been proved helpful in so many situations, relatively much more successfully than drugs or medical, whatever you call it, right? Medical drugs or anything. So why not um, so why put a blind eye on things that work and things that are very efficiently proven to work, then just go towards drugs or consumption and be like, no, it has medical benefits and all of that. Like you said, it's a thing to think about, definitely.
yeah, yeah. I just wanted to I'm very glad we mentioned this. I know a lot of people are gonna be offended after watching this particular podcast of like their weed and whatever, but just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to because I just feel it has some sort of if you think it's providing you medical benefits, then it's directly like doing something to your mental health, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
need to be aware of that rather than just be like, oh, I'm sad today. I might just, like
Yeah.
take some minutes and I'll be that thing will be forgotten the next day. But like,
Mm-hmm.
how is it really affecting your mental health?
Yeah, it's
Um,
definitely just something to think about because you're intaking drugs. It's definitely going to chemically alter a lot of things in your body, from your hormones to your connections to your neural networks. Everything, it affects everything. So unless you're doing it in a really controlled environment, I doubt it's as useful as you think, Vanamna.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer of addressing your problems when you're present, like present in your conscious state, rather than
Right.
or just having it and you just forget about it. I know I'm pretty sure it heals you, but
Mm-hmm.
still, I just feel like you need to know what's happening. You need to be present. You need to be conscious. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think too much on weed and um. Okay. I think we covered almost everything. Oh, there's one
Yeah.
more thing we haven't covered, social media. I
Mm,
think that wasn't like we didn't talk about this the other day, but um, I personally feel that social media has deteriorated everyone's mental health in some way or the other. What do you think
mm.
about that?
Definitely. Social media links um, psychology to in all aspects, okay, in terms of body image issues, in terms of physical health, in terms of screen time and our attention and concentration, in terms of our overthinking and our cognitive processes. There's been lot and lots of researches, I'm sorry about that, that does prove that social media is not very helpful
Yeah,
in a lot of extent. One, like body, starting with body image issues. There's cost to distorted body standards, beauty standards because of social media, right? We see
yeah,
all these bizarre beauty standards on social media, both for men, women, or any other gender non-conforming individuals. And we see how much it affects their expectation. We see how to what limits people will go to conform to these standards and everything. Talking about like another thing about like concentration and screen time. There's so many physical issues, physical manifestations that have been developed because of our screen time, and that is a direct product of social media, right?
right.
um like if we see the generation now, like I was so shocked when I saw my cousins who are in early teens or who are in teens right now, because of the exposure that they have, because of the language that you're using and everything. It was very surprising to me. So it is bringing a big change in terms of society, and definitely it's deteriorating mental health in a very steep and deep way, you know. But
Yeah,
I feel like having considering all of this, we feel like we could utilize social media
for
to turn the tables, okay, to turn the tables in a way that we could advocate, we could share, we could have open conversations. There's like two sides to the sword, one, Sunny,
yeah,
two
and I'm a
edge
big
two edge
believer of
sword.
that. I'm a big believer of
Right.
that social media can be used for good, and I try and again, like I've always
Mm-hmm.
I know people are not open to that, but I've always believed that just don't put your highlights like happy moments. Like, and that's why I try to share
Mm-hmm.
like all the negative things or like my
Mm-hmm.
downfalls as well on social media. And again, it can
Mm-hmm.
be
Right.
used so much in such because you're connecting to so many people at the same time. But I think
Absolutely.
like right now, I think it's being used in a negative way more than the positive way because um,
Mm-hmm.
people are addicted to
Yeah.
I uninstalled TikTok a few months ago because I was like, oh my God, like there's like random
Yeah.
stuff here and again attention span, right? I mean there's still reels. I don't
Absolutely.
I don't watch a lot of that either, but it's just like your attention span is just, I think I
Mm-hmm.
attended a presentation on this as well, like how their attention span has just decreased. Like just us humans, our attention span has decreased because of all these short clips, and anything
Mm-hmm.
longer than like few seconds, we cannot watch it, or we
Yeah,
just like, you know.
we'll start
Yeah,
being
so that's why I
restless
just
about it.
watch. Yeah, I've really pushed myself to watch longer videos, just like the podcast that we're doing, or like longer YouTube
Mm-hmm.
videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Again, people have a
exactly.
choice, yeah, and then they choose to
They
watch
do.
shorter
Mhm.
videos.
They do. I feel like mindfulness comes to play in terms of social media too, right? You have to be absolutely mindful of what you're consuming on YouTube, social media, so that's why Malay. About TikTok matter, I don't think we have that much control on what comes up in our screen. I mean, there's algorithm and everything.
Yeah,
I'm not a very tech savvy person, so I don't know how algorithms work, but um to some extent we do have control over what we are consuming and what we are not. It's the same thing as being mindful about what we are saying to people, what kind of people we are surrounding with भनौँ न social media पनि त्यस्तै हो जस्तो लाग्छ कि मलाई. We have some autonomy over what videos we are watching, what who we are following, like how much ethical content creators we are surrounding ourselves with, all of these things. So
yeah,
while social media has caused downfall in terms of mental health, this being aware of this exact fact can help us move towards being mindful of what we keep around us. Phenomena.
yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I don't have anything else. That's all that we were going to talk about, and we did.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to share? I'm just trying to like look if we missed anything.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't think
trying
we.
to go over anything that we. I think so. We did talk about a lot of things, a lot of wonderful, wonderful stuff. Um, No, I don't think, like, if whoever is watching this, if you want to add anything to the conversation, maybe you can comment, or maybe you can reach out to Polisadi and let her know if anything. So I hope we have more conversations like these in the future. And I'm
Yes.
really, really glad we did this and we had this conversation. And like, there's so many things that we don't know, even in terms of mental health and therapy and whatever we talked about. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's a process of growing, right? So until and unless we have a conversation, our growth is always going to be like your pace. And
Stagnant.
we
Yeah.
have to, yeah, we have to have conversations, we have to talk about things and be open to hearing what other people think about things for like that exponential growth one. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for inviting me today, Ponsavi.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prasanni. This was a very, very
Mm-hmm.
wonderful conversation, and we touched upon a lot of things. And I hope
Mm-hmm.
whoever's listening, they have something to take away from this. They learn something.
Mm-hmm.
They will begin more mindful, will embrace their
Yeah.
emotions, not be scared
Mm-hmm.
to express, and consider therapy. It's not just for like the deep depressed and anxious people. It's for everyone if you want to give
Mm-hmm.
it a try and improve your mental health. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
Oh,
yes,
can I add something? Yeah, so
yes,
for whoever is watching this, you might be in Nepal, you might be living in abroad, Nepalese people, Nepalese friends who are living abroad. If you're considering therapy or if you're considering to seek any kind of mental health related advice and you're unsure where to go, maybe we can have Mankakuraku link or any other
the
helpful links
description.
that I
Yes,
might have in the
yes,
description,
yes,
or you could directly reach out to Polisadi and who can
definitely.
we can connect with me. I'm really open to conversations. I really like talking about mental health and therapy and emotional intelligence and all of this stuff. So yeah, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Polisadi. We can leave a link in the description. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Prasanni. This was very, very fulfilling conversation on my end, and I hope you felt the same, and hope the audience
absolutely. Mhm.
also
Feels
got a
the
lot
same.
from this conversation and feels the same way. And hopefully we'll do another one, probably maybe
Sure.
can continue this or some different topic that we are both passionate about. And
Hmm.
yeah, I'll see you all in the next podcast. Thank you so much for joining, or thank you so much for listening, everyone, and have a great, great day or good night or whatever, whenever you're watching this right now. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank